to join us for Fred's new book called Talk of the Town. We really appreciate that you took the time to come to JIAS. And we hope that you can fill your, the little sheet going around, the mailing list, so that we can have your details and that you can be invited for more events. Today, Lorena Satole is going to be the chair, and she's going to ask Fred some questions about his book. And yeah, and then after they've spoken about the book, you'll have a chance to ask Fred questions as well about this book and other books that he's written as well. You can begin.
You don't know your name.
Mine is Reshma, sorry. I'm sure you've seen my name on the invitations.
Thank you, Reshma.
Thank you, Rashmi. Good evening, everyone. As Rashmi said, I'm Lorena Satole, and today we are going to talk a little bit about this Fred's newest book. It was the 10th published book last week, but there's an 11th one which is coming out soon. In Nayamedi, this one here, and very exciting. Congratulations, and yeah, thank you so much for coming. And Fred has a way of introducing himself in beautiful isiZulu, and I was very happy when I had the honor to experience you introducing yourself in this big way. So if you could do us the honors.
Yeah, you can't, those of us who are from the kingdom by the sea follow protocol, and the protocol dictates that I ask you to stand up. And you shall repeat after me. Bayete!
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 Now we can sing.
Thank you so much, Fred. What a beautiful way of introducing yourself. As we've already said, today we're talking about Top of the Town. It is, it's very compact, very small, but it has like 10 beautiful and reflective stories that talk to a lot of themes. So I'm quickly going to read a couple of reviews from this book. The first one is from Criselda Kekana, and she says, "More please. Fred Khumalo stories are as familiar as the boy or girl next door, allowing you in but leaving you wanting more." And the second one is from me, which I'm going to read to you. I was very lucky to get an advanced copy, and I said, Fred Khumalo writes with a great deal of understanding of the subject matter and with the reader in mind. Punchy delivery and very reflective. The narrative is not for the squeamish or the faint-hearted. So this is the book. And yeah, to start the conversation, Fred, let's just talk about the collection, and in particular, the title story, because it sort of sets, not sort of, it definitely sets the tone for the rest of the stories.
Yes, thank you very much, Lorraine, for the introduction, and good evening to everyone for coming. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I was fortunate enough to be one of the first fellows when this place opened some years ago. The collection that you see in front of you is not a work that was produced overnight. It's a journey. It tracks my literary journey from when I was still very young as an up-and-coming writer. One of the short stories in the collection, Ram the Hermit, was first published in 1990 in Staff Rider. Those of you who are of a certain age will remember Staff Rider. Yeah, so that was the first time I got published as a writer. short stories. At that time, the short story and the poem were the chosen mode of writing because of this urgency that was attached to the written word. You have to recall that in terms of context, there was the state of emergency and a lot of repressive laws against the media and the press in particular. Therefore, there were stories that the press couldn't publish. So, to obviate the blackout of information, magazines like Staff Writer came to the fore, the Classic and so on, as a conduit for information. What is apartheid doing to ordinary people? Hence the poems of the time were very angry, they were very urgent and so on. So were the short stories in Staff Writer. So the writers of that time were like journalists reporting to the world what was happening inside South Africa. So that's where I come from as a writer. I was an activist as a writer. Even before I became a proper journalist, because I'm also a journalist. So I started writing short stories because they were quicker to get to the point, and at the time there were many outlets for short story writers. And then there was a huge drought. The Staff Writer shut down, and the Classic, the Contrast, they all shut down, and we stopped writing short stories. Those of us who were writing short stories at that time stopped because there were no outlets for us. Now there's a new resurgence of the short story form, I think, which is why I thought, no, let me collect some of these stories from the past. And of course, I had other stories in my figurative drawer, which hadn't been published. So I just updated them and collected them, put them together, and sent them to the publishers. Hence the collection you see in front of you. The title story, Talk of the Town, is semi-autobiographical. Those of you who are from the township can really easily relate to what was happening back in the 70s, where black people couldn't afford to buy things for cash. They didn't have ready cash to buy furniture, pieces of furniture, or even the clothes on their backs. So there was a system for clothes and furniture called the lay-by system. In the furniture world, it was called the hire purchase. So you go to Town Top, there was a very exploitative furniture store where we buy your sofas, let's say 500 rand, which was a lot of money. So you pay a deposit of 10 rand, and every month you pay maybe 5 rand. So you would pay for that for the next 2 years. By that time, when you sat down to add up the amount that you paid, you would have paid double the original price of that piece of furniture. That's how exploitative the system was. But we had no other choice. So the story speaks to that, but in a very humorous kind of way, because the narrator of the story is a kid of 11 years of age. Yeah. So that's the tone I wanted to set, which is why we agreed with the publishers that it should be the title story and also the story that opens the book and then takes the reader on this journey. Some of the stories, as Lauren will point out later, some of these stories are current, contemporary, dealing with xenophobia, for example, the crime situation in our cities and so on. So, but I've answered your question.
Now, my next question is, I think it relates to you mentioned autobiographical elements. My next question talks to memory and writing fiction. But before we get to that, I would just like you to give us a taste of the book, because I think for me the opening paragraph definitely set the tone for the rest of the works. It's on page 7 if you've got your Bibles.
How many paragraphs is the opening paragraph?
Just one, two paragraphs.
Right. So this is the title story, Talk of the Town. As I said, the narrator is a boy child. Here we go. We claw back to the past, where we find sweet memories hiding in a corner, we'd grab them by the ears, drag them out of their hideout and ask them to speak to us. Speak to us, memories, speak to us. The memories open their mouths and speak. Mpumalanga Township, KwaZulu-Natal, 1979. You are 10 years of age. The neighbors are still salivating over a brand new kitchen scheme from Ellerines that was delivered to your house at the end of October the previous year. Your mother had bought it along with an equally enviable dining room suite from Town Talk. A splendiferous Christmas is inevitable. And so on and on it goes. So yeah, that's the tone. It's humorous, it's childish, and it's very colorful because it's a child who is welcome, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. So this child is overawed by the new pieces of furniture which have been acquired by his mother, and obviously they are setting the tone for Christmas, because what would happen, people would, those people who knew that they can't afford to pay 500 rand over the next 2 years, they would order the piece of furniture around October in preparation for December. December is Christmas time. Visitors from all over the country would visit you in Soweto or whatever township you were located in. So you wanted to impress them. So you buy the latest hi-fi, you buy the latest sofa, and they come and they're impressed. And obviously you've put down a deposit at the store, Ellerines or Town Talk. Christmas is over, it's January, you go back to work and you look around, I don't want this furniture anymore. So you stop paying. So they will send the collections department, send a truck to collect the furniture. You don't care, you've enjoyed it. So that was the modus operandi.
Yeah.
So it speaks to that as well.
I mean, you spoke about the exploitative nature of these furniture stores. Now, has our buying habits changed as Black people moving away from the township into the suburbs? Do you feel that we are buying stuff differently, more consciously, or do we still have the coloniality in us? Because we've had grandparents working in these big white homes with big furniture hands. My grandmother's house in Middlelands was crammed with big furniture. You know, there was more furniture than people in the home. So have we changed as parents in 2019? Are we buying differently? Are we looking at furniture consciously, or have we carried those habits into our lives?
I mean, you live in Joburg and you see the proliferation of shopping malls in the city, and they all thrive. You go to Sandton. In Sandton there are 8 malls, just the Sandton area. The Sandton city, there are other malls, satellite malls around Sandton. And they all thrive. What this tells me is we are living on credit as South Africans in general, Black people in particular. We carry 3, 4 credit cards because we don't have money. So sometimes I'll pay this credit card this month. And I take money from the other card so I can pay the other card. And I live with friends like that, mainly female friends, I'm sorry to say that, who live like that. And it's sad that the legacy from back then, we want to be seen, to be well-dressed, to be driving the latest car, which we can't afford. Unfortunately, that mentality is still there. However, I'm happy to observe some changes. There are people who are saving money, who would rather buy a beautiful house in the suburbs and drive an old Skoda car. They don't give a damn about what people are going to say. Rather than buying a BMW and you're still staying at your mother's back room, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. But the reality is, it is there in the Black community. Yeah. Particularly in the Black community, because we haven't been educated properly. So we think, okay, the minute I finish my degree, I start working, I buy a BMW. You haven't saved money or whatever. But because you see Lorraine is driving the latest car and so on. So those are the issues I think that I speak to through the stories here. Describing or defining Black lives and the progress that we are making or have made, and also the challenges that are facing us, whether they're imposed by the system or we internalize them because of how we've been brought up. Lifestyles and
Now, let's explore the physical placement in time in all your 10 stories. I mean, you start in Mpumalanga, then you move to Harvard, back to Zimbabwe, Angola, and South Africa. And you don't lose the rhythm. You know, the rhythm is carried throughout the 10 stories. How were you able to sustain the writing process seamlessly?
yeah, as I say, it's the collection tracks my career both as a literary writer, but also as a journalist. I wouldn't have been to Zimbabwe had I not been a journalist. I went to Zimbabwe the first time in 1990, 10 years after independence, and I saw how beautiful that country was. And then the brown stuff hit the fan in 2001 when the MDC was born and they were being attacked. I went back to Zimbabwe to cover the land invasion story. I spent there 2 to 3 weeks just going up and down the country, understanding what is happening. So, and then of course, the more you immerse yourself into the story that you're covering, you see other elements of a story that you think don't belong in a newspaper story. So the critical eye that is there at the back of your mind as a creative artist says, this is a short story, or these are the beginnings of a novel. I wanted to do a story about the Kukura that is the genocide that happened in 1984. Some people do not like to use the word genocide, but the ethnic attacks that we saw in 1984 in Zimbabwe, the fight between mainly the ZANU-PF of Mugabe and Joshua Nkomo's party. Although these are political formations, there's a lot of ethnic elements in the politics. So the Kukura basically was an attack on Ndebele people. So in my investigation on land grabs and land invasions, the story of the Kukura kept coming through. And then I came back home, I did my dispatches for the newspaper I was working for. And then I started thinking about a novel, about where this land invasion in Zimbabwe comes from, and how the Kukura struggle erased, in a way, the beautiful story of Chimorena, what Zimbabwe achieved in 1980. So I was trying to grapple with all those elements, but it didn't become a novel as I had hoped. Those are the frustrations of writing fiction. Sometimes you think, I've got a novel, you jot it down and think, it doesn't work. Maybe you just dump the whole thing. But this time around, I thought, no, I can confine this into a long short story that is longer than a traditional short story, which is why we have the story here called The Queen Face. So I'm looking at the Kukura Honi, and we fast forward to what is happening now in Zimbabwe, human trafficking.
Yeah.
People being stolen from their homes, being brought to South Africa. Some of them have their organs harvested without their permission. Sometimes they get drugged. You sit with a guy at a bar, they drug your drink, they drag you out into a car, they slice you open, they steal your kidneys, they leave you there. Sometimes it happens like that. Sometimes they do it with your approval. They give you 20,000 rand. They say they're going to take one kidney, which they do, and they pay you 20,000 rand. But we are so desperate, we are in South Africa, You are homeless, you are jobless, you are desperate. So 20,000 rand to you is like heaven. You know, it is manna from heaven. Those stories have been reported in drips and drabs of the media. So I tried to bring it all together under this short story, Queen Face. Yeah, to look at the issue of xenophobia, how it actually affects ordinary people who are trying to eke out a living.
Now, you have 10 standalone short stories, but in 4 of them, in 2 of them, the protagonists are repeated. We have the Vusi character,
Yes.
who has 2 stories in here, and we have Gaz Makesh.
Yes.
Gaz Makesh
Okay.
also has 2 stories in here, and the language as well is harsh, and I denoted some tones of a personal nature. Now, how, I know this is fiction, but how close are you
The
to
insinuation.
these
The insinuation. I don't like the insinuation. Yeah. I'm hearing some sneakers from this corner. No, some people have been on social media saying Vusi is Fred in disguise. I deny the allegation vehemently. Okay, the stories, those of you who haven't read the book, there are 2 stories, kind of interlinked, featuring a character called Vusi. This character finds himself at Harvard. He's studying over there. He's studying business at the Harvard Business School, and he's from South Africa, and he finds himself very lonely in this. Back home, he was a ladies' man. He was very popular with the ladies, and now he gets over there in America. He's lonely. The women are not interested in him, and he's surprised and shocked that people don't see how beautiful he is, and so he's shocked, you know. So he does other things, you know, to help himself, you know, to deal with the situation, you know. So that is the story I wrote. Now, this Fred Khumalo did go to Harvard. And this Fred Khumalo's Zulu name happens to be Vusi. But this Fred Khumalo, when he went to Harvard, he wasn't lonely and settled. Why is that? Because when he went to Harvard, he went with his wife and his kids. So he couldn't have been. I'm at Harvard, and I interacted with some Kenyan guys and guys from Zimbabwe who were really lonely and felt alienated from the rest of the Harvard community. They felt excluded. The Black Americans didn't like us. They think we are getting preferential treatment. How do we get scholarships to Harvard when they can't be considered? So it becomes very, very, very precarious for Black Africans who are there. When we first got there, we were very naive. We thought, oh, the brothers are going to embrace us. Oh, welcome to America, brothers. Mother from another mother, you know. No, there's nothing like that. So they didn't like us at all. So now I'm interacting with these guys who are lonely, and some of them are at the point of where they want to go back home. That's how terrible it was. And I'm saying, come on, man. You're at Harvard. How many people get this once in a lifetime opportunity? So that inspired the story behind the 2 stories that I have in collection. So I'm imagining this character from South Africa who's lonely, who doesn't understand why he's not popular with women over there, because back home he could choose, you know. Yeah. So I'm looking at there are elements of misogyny in one of the stories, because the character was misogynistic in South Africa. He was abusive to women and so on. So yeah, I wanted to show that even at Harvard you get people who have very shady light and pass. Not everyone who goes there is clean and for light and everything. They've got skeletons in their cupboards and so on. So yeah, so that's what I did. I wrote 2 interlinked stories about that. The one story, well, I'm hoping you'll read the book, so I don't need to tell you. But I just wanted to say, I'm looking at xenophobia from another angle. The South African guy is in America. He is experiencing xenophobia from the other angle. Whereas the other story, Queen Face, is looking at this Zimbabwean woman, or the Zimbabwean characters who are in South Africa, being treated like that in South Africa. So, yeah, look who's here.
And MITT, what is it? I didn't understand it because.
Sorry.
Oh.
So there will be time for questions.
Sorry. No, because we were explaining it actually. So I just wanted to know what MITT is on the story on the bus.
Oh, okay. MIT is a university which is close to Harvard. It's a rival to Harvard. Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Yes. Yes. Welcome, Zukiso.
Let's explore the themes in the book. The back of your book says this vibrant collection explores identity and belonging in South Africa and further afield. It reveals about exiled comrades studying abroad, xenophobia, and past and current tension life. And further on reading the book, you also get a theme on apartheid South Africa, ancestors and our relationship with them, diasporic living, and military veterans. Now, with this wide range of themes, when you were thinking of putting this collection together, was there a mind mapping process that you followed?
I would say yes, even though the stories, as I say, were written in different eras, different stages of my development as a writer. When I sat down to curate them, to use the popular word now, to collect them, because I had lots, there are many more in my drawer, which I couldn't include here, because I wanted to speak to be thematic, to speak to issues that are contemporary to us, that are real now, like xenophobia. And I wanted to reflect on the land question, which is current, and it is explored in one of the stories. And I wanted to explore sexuality, which is explored in the Vusi story. And I wanted to look at the reality of South Africans who spent years in exile. Now they are back in South Africa, and how do they fit in? So I explored that through the Guzmakash stories. So Guzmakash is the narrator in those 2 stories. He's relating what he experienced in exile and how he's fitting in the new South Africa, in Yeoville, where he is based at the time of the writing of the stories. So thematically, I was hoping for an all-encompassing kind of approach. Because this is not a novel, I was at liberty to use many voices, many characters, and many different locales. One story is set in Durban, for example. Others are set here in Johannesburg. Another one is set in Zimbabwe. The others are set in America, and so on and so forth. So it gave me the liberty to paint, to put as many splashes of color as I could on this canvas of mine, as I was painting it, So I hope the reader gets the flavors as well as I imagined them as I was putting the stories together.
You explore a range of historical and cultural moments, like in the Vusi story. Both stories have very strong feminist message. Now, how important is it for a writer or a storyteller to remain current with global developments?
So which story are you referring to?
The two stories, the bus is not full.
Oh yes, yes. Those two stories speak to sexuality. They speak to global migration. People going to America to take advantage of educational opportunities which they can't get in their own country. And of course, the cultural aspiration. In the Vusi story, this bus is not full. Vusi grew up in South Africa and he had his own image of America based on what he saw or he imbibed from popular culture, television, and movies and music. So when you are watching TV here in South Africa, you think America is all glamour, it's all glam, bling, bling, everything is bling, bling, and you've seen so many violent movies. So you're in Boston, you're thinking that you're going to see a mugging, you're going to see some fight. Vusi is hoping for that kind of stuff. Yeah, and it doesn't happen. So it's a kind of an anticlimax. So I explore that because that is what happened to my kids. Because when we went there, I had been to America many times as a journalist. So when we got there, we are in Boston. Boston is smaller than Joburg, well, almost. It's a big one. And so, are we in America yet? They ask. So they're not impressed. Only when we went to Times Square in New York did they say, this is America. So Vusi is going through that as well. He is saying, how do I write back home and tell them I've arrived in America, this is what I've seen, because there's nothing worth reporting. So I'm looking at the cultural expectations or cultural shock. There was no shock. He was shocked that he wasn't shocked. So I explored the irony, of being in America and you realize Johannesburg is more dramatic than this, Yeah, so.
There's a story here titled Ancestral Voices. More than identity and belonging, the way that I read it, it also explores language, especially our indigenous languages, because you have this black girl who is born and lives in America and comes to South Africa, and she has no affinity with the country of her parents' birth. Can you just talk us through that, the process, and also with reference to us black people sending our kids to private schools? And I mean, English is not only a language, it's also a way of living. And we sort of get lost in translation. When the kids come home, but then somehow they're growing up English. So how do we now navigate?
Yeah, it's a traumatic, it's an ongoing trauma in the black community. You have these kids with the surname Khumalo. They can't speak isiZulu. Not because they don't want to speak isiZulu. At home, the parents might be speaking isiZulu. But at school, where they started grade 0, grade R at school, where English was the first language. So that's the language they get exposed to right from the onset. At home, they might imbibe some conversational, colloquial Zulu and so on, but they can't read the language because it is not being taught properly at school. You send your kid to these private schools, which are very expensive. The teacher who's teaching them isiZulu can't speak isiZulu properly as well. Therefore, it is a double tragedy. They come back home, they can converse at a very superficial level in isiZulu or Setswana and so on, but they can't read the language. So I thought I wanted to explore that, but I wanted to dramatize it. So I created this character who is a Zulu girl, but born in America. Her father was an exile, a political exile, studied in America, stayed in America, got married to an American woman, and this kid was born. The kid's name is Figile Gumende. That's a proper Zulu name. And then the father passes away in America, and she has to come to South Africa to finish her schooling. She can't speak Zulu, and people can't believe this. Oh yeah, complicating thing is she's got blue eyes from her mother, and she's black, and it complicates her life completely. They say she's wearing contact lenses, and she's a fake. They say she's a fake. How come are you figuring out and you can't speak Zulu and so? So I'm exploring the trauma of our children in South Africa through an additional lens of a child who is Zulu but born in America, coming back home, which is no longer home. So yeah, I wanted to double the trauma. Yeah, that's why I wrote that story.
And I mean, you do double the trauma. They, not to give the story away, there's a slaughtering, you know, and they do all these cultural
because
rituals.
she's a Zulu girl, she must be welcomed properly into the Gumende fold. So what do? They slaughter a goat for her. So it is her goat. She must sit with the goat. She can't handle that. You know, so I dramatize the whole thing to send this message across that, you know, culture is not static. We can't expect our children to be forever proper Zulus, because the reality that we live in, it is almost impossible to be unicultural. After all, South Africa is trying to carve out a new multicultural culture. That culture is not going to manifest itself magically. It will happen at a very basic level, in the home, at school, within play groups, and so on. So yeah, it will happen, whether we like it or not. Yes, we must teach our children to have an affinity with the mother tongue, with the father tongue, because I Zulu and so on. But it's a blessing that they are multicultural, you know. So that, I think that is my argument through that story. But I had to make it as traumatic as possible for the character, so that the reader can relate to this reality.
You have a very, I found it very, very sad and traumatic. I think it's story 8 in the Bibles about TP theory. And
Yes.
yeah, how is that anecdotal, or is that something that you just
Now,
made up?
that's a completely made up story. But what? Okay, I wanted to look at. There is this unfortunate narrative that is prevalent in our townships, that foreign nationals from up north, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and so on, only came into this country after 1994, when our borders opened up, which is a myth. That is not true. Malawians have been here since the 1960s. Hastings Banda, who became president of Malawi, studied here, lived in Alex for a long time. Samora Machel, the president of Mozambique, lived in Alexandra as well for a long time. So I wanted to show another layer of foreigners who have been here forever. That's why I created this character. And because he's been here forever, he already had children with a local woman, and then they fell out, and so I wanted to show how caring a father this man was. Another thing, to explode the myth that foreigners come here, make our women pregnant, and then desert them. I'm showing this caring father who is looking after this woman, who bore him a child many years ago, but he can't track them down. So I use him as a conduit for an exploration of that reality.
Now let's talk about the language throughout the stories. I mean, you depict Americans as very harsh, rude and violent. The Nigerians are a bit verbose. And then you have the MK soldiers, you know, they have a little bit of fanakalo going on there. And then the military veterans have like a wistful desperation in their stories. And the last story sort of speaks to, because I was asking someone that what happened to the military veterans who can't find jobs. And I think in The Invisibles, you sort of shed light on that somehow they became cash in transit robbers, which is a shame, really.
Yes, it's that phenomenon became very pronounced in around 1996, 98, when there was a spate of cash in transit robberies. And yes, of course, some people were caught, and they turned out to be highly trained former MK and PAC veterans, people who had been trained in Angola. They came back home, they got the money that they were given 30,000 rand when they came back home. I can't remember the terminology that was used for that money. To say thank you, you served 30,000 rand, that's it. Some of them did get absorbed into the security forces, into the army, into the Hawks and the police, but the bulk of them were not so lucky. So if you are a trained fighter who finds himself on faced with economic difficulties, and you don't have an education, what do? You use your skills that you have. You come into a country that is clearly violent, so you just blend in, and you use your skills properly to earn a living for yourself. So that's what I was trying to explore in that. It's a fictional story, obviously, but inspired by those attacks that happened in 1996 up to 1998.
Okay. Well, some fun question for you. As a reader, I hear a lot from writers who say they always want to retain the authenticity and purity in voices, so they don't really read anything when they write. How do you do it? I'll
make it very elementary. I'll use an example that I always quote when we speak about writing and the process of writing. A soccer player plays football almost every day. He might have only one match per week, an official match on Saturday. But during the week, he goes into the field for 90 minutes, with or without his coach, to practice his skills. If he's a striker, he shoots at goal. If he's a goalkeeper, he gets someone to play with him. This is how I dive now, and you train that muscle. The same applies with writing. If you don't read, you're going to be a terrible writer, I promise you. You have to read, and read not only what appeals to your taste. You know, I love crime novels, but I read across genres, because I have to know what's happening in whatever genre. And I have to, yes, as a writer, you begin to copy some writers that you respect. Oh, Walter Mosley, I love his style. Okay, let me try and be him, but I don't copy his words, but his techniques, you know. If you're a soccer player who's up and coming, you want to copy Neymar, you want to copy the other shot guy, what's his name? Messi, you know, yeah. So, as a writer as well, in as much as I've published 11 books now, there are still some big writers I look up to. So I read them repeatedly. I could have read Walter Mosley's books maybe 4 times. He's got many, many novels, but I keep going back to them for inspiration. I read Stephen King because I like the way he uses pace. You never get bored. Don't get bored with a Stephen King story. So I take elements from different writers. So a writer who doesn't read is a disaster to herself or to himself. Yeah, you just have to read it. Yeah.
One last question before I ask you to read a passage of your choice from that book. Change is the only constant, right? The literary space is being revolutionized, and the book industry keeps on going, undergoing major disruptions. What keeps you going back to your keyboard?
There's so many stories that, in real life, Kanji, I'm a terrible storyteller, you know that. But I've got many stories. And then I said, okay, I want to tell this story. But when I opened my mouth, sitting with my buddy, Monty Makai, and he says, okay, tell this story, Fred. And I don't realize he's making fun of me. And then he's saying, look at him now, he can't tell us. Okay, write it down. So I keep going back because I've got many stories that I think need to be told, and I believe I've got the ability or the yearning to tell them. That's what keeps me going. They can take the form of a short story or a novel. Of late I've been doing historical novels. My upcoming novel, September, is a historical novel. But I'm working on a novel for teenagers right now. It's an experimentation for me to speak through the voice of a teenage girl.
Teenage girl?
Yes. I don't know. So we'll see how it turns out. So I'm going to read from Queen Face, because I just like the opening. Queen Face, as I said, is set in Zimbabwe. These people, this community is about to be stolen by war veterans who want to sell them into slavery in the Congo. Queen Face is squatting behind a bush, away from prying eyes. Flies are already buzzing about, impatiently waiting for her to finish her business so they can take over. Nature must run its course. Her eyes are full of fatigue, drooping. The sudden appearance of a quivering smudge on the northern horizon startles her to alertness. She uses her hand as a visor against the sun. Is that a storm approaching? She must get out of here. She shoots to her feet. Wait, she hasn't wiped. She squats again. No toilet paper. So she gathers a fistful of dried tree leaves, wipes her behind. Her threadbare yellow pinafore billows in the afternoon air as she runs at full tilt towards her colleagues at the extreme end of the tobacco field. Her bare feet on the hard-baked earth. She has to sound the clarion call. They have to run for cover. Only 4 weeks ago, almost the entire workforce of one of the neighboring farms perished in a freak thunderstorm, struck by lightning while they cowered under a clump of trees. Her first thought is of her sister. She has to get perseverance to safety. Her nieces are still at school, so they will be sheltered. After a while, she slows down to a steady trot, checks the sky. It is placid. I'm being silly, she says out loud, giggling. They're going to laugh at me. My dear, why are you carrying on like a madwoman? She whirls around, sees the owner of the voice bending over to rest the guitar he's been carrying on the ground, leaning on its neck, breathless. Shooks at him. Mark Webber, you know it is a punishable offense on this farm to spy on women while they are doing their toilet. She picks up a stone, throws it at him, misses. and so on it goes. So that's Queen Faith in Zimbabwe. So yeah, those are the stories. Maybe we open up for questions.
I just want to say congratulations on the short stories. And I love them too much. But my favorites were about Bruce. Especially the story in the bus. I love it because I also experienced something of that similar nature. But my question actually, it's about the story. I forgot the name of the story. It's the one that you wrote about the Zanzibari prostitute who helps a guy. That actually stands out for me.
Ramo the Hermit.
Yeah,
Yes.
because you just simply, during your talk, you talked about how in South Africa we talk about people that have come to South Africa only in 1994. But that story for me traces it from long time ago. The Zanzibaris coming into South Africa.
They came into South Africa in the 1800s.
And when I was reading that, because I was in there not so long, I was thinking about people like Abdul Mlazi. And then, so I just want to find out, because in the story, it's more like the relationship with the local people is not yet gelled,
Yeah.
So I just want to find out about now. That the people have arrived from long time ago. Have they been, like for instance, do you find that the relationship, because it's set in Chatsworth, I think, do you find that the relationship with these Zanzibaris in Chatsworth, Zanzibaris that have come to Chatsworth long time ago, have been, what is the English word?
Assimilated.
Assimilated. Yeah. Have they been assimilated according to your...
The story of the Zanzibari community in Durban is tragic. They came to South Africa in the 1800s.
Yeah.
They are Muslim, they are black like me. My complexion, exactly. Some of them down. So when they arrived here, they were allocated a piece of land along the bluff. So the bluff in Durban, along the beach.
Yeah.
They were left there. They were indentured labor like Indians who were brought here to work on the sugarcane farms because the local people were not prepared to do that. Now, because they are Muslim and they are living over there, they never interacted with local black people. And then when the apartheid government came into power in 1948, they were removed from that area because that area had been classified for white occupation. So they were taken from there, and then once they have been taken from there, the government is wondering where do we place them because they are not our local Kafirs. So they can't put them in a township. They don't speak any local language. They are Muslim. So they took them, they put them among the Indian community. So they assimilated with Indian people because they are Muslim as well. So they spoke English and their Zanzibari language. Swahili, and there's another language they speak as well, which is not Swahili. So they're to local black people. They were Indians, so they never really assimilated. And of course, they were not trusted because they were like Indians. So they were called Mazizimbani. So if you go to Durban, the word it's like the equivalent of Kwalemoya. It's a Zimbabwe, and there are many other insulting words that were used for them. And they have got Indian names. Diz Abdul, he was a soccer player some years ago. He comes from that community. Blanche Moela, she's a runner, she's old now, she's 72, she still runs. She comes from that community. So they were more Indian than African. But after 1994, things changed. Opened up, they moved to the townships, because some of them could now speak Zulu. So So Abdul Milaz, the editor of Sowetan, of Sunday World, is from that community. He's a Zulu guy now,
Yeah, of course I was.
So but their story is very multi-layered, No, thanks for raising that question. So I wrote that short story just to look at that as well, very briefly, what happened to that community.
Okay. Thanks for the talk. I like the way you actually touched into our historical moments or realities, and you also dwelled much on the legacy of colonization and apartheid, especially in basic education around the issue of language. So my question is, don't you think you also in a way perpetuated the legacy of apartheid and colonization in writing the book, because you actually chose a colonial language to actually communicate those stories, as opposed to choosing your own indigenous language to actually speak about your own stories? No, we're speaking about this book.
Okay. This book, I can write in Zulu. Yeah, this is evidence of that. But these stories were written, well, some of them were written back then. Ramu the Hermit, for example, was published in 1990 in Statrider, speaking to that specific reality. And I felt, well, at the time, there was no outlet for Zulu writers. To be fair, to be honest with you, many of us who can write in Zulu got only liberated to write in our language recently, because you could write, who's going to publish you? Yeah. If you wrote in Zulu, you were writing for the schools market, and the apartheid Department of Education had specific requirements for the kind of subjects you could write about. And you couldn't write a novel for general consumption, because who's going to publish you? Who's going to sell your book? So it was a very painful thing for us who can write in Zulu. But now, gradually, things have opened up, which gave me the opportunity to write in Zulu. These are my first Zulu books. And I've worked writing for Zulu newspapers for many years, but I couldn't write a book because there was no publisher prepared for that. So it's another reality of colonialism, what it did to our languages, suppress them at all costs. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Khumalo, first of all, thank you very much and congratulations. It was indeed a great treaty. And probably I should also ask the ladies and gentlemen around, what is your favorite story in this book? Because I definitely would like to make a special reference to the ancestral voices. It's definitely my favorite one. And I was thinking why it's my favorite one. Obviously because it was learning for me. It was much, a lot of discoveries. And at the same time, I caught myself in the thinking that it was an interesting combination of Tolstoy, and just to be sure why I'm involved in Tolstoy, because I'm Russian, and unconsciously I was comparing you with some Russian authors. So it was unconsciously, because I don't think there is a need to compare. Authors are all so unique, but unconsciously it comes to me. The Tolstoy and sometimes Dostoevsky appearance, if you understand what I mean, because Tolstoy's style for me it's a teaching, obviously when everybody understands what is your position inside the story. And Dostoevsky's story is polyphony. You never know who is talking the truth and what is the position of the author. So probably it was that reason. So it's obviously my favorite one, and maybe one question to a little bit elaborate about the Izituta, because it translated as stupid one.
Yes.
Why ancestors are stupid? That was my question.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a Zulu. Thank you for the comparison with Tolstoy. I was
Nicely played.
No. My inspiration when I write short stories is Chekhov, in fact, Anton Chekhov, because I find him very precise in his stories. Yeah. So yeah, I keep going back to his short stories. His technique of a short story, and when he tells you how to write a story of any sort, if you introduce a gun in the first page, in the third page, you should have gone off. Yeah, no. So yeah, one gets inspired and influenced by different writers. Isithuta. Yeah, exactly. The direct translation, Isithuta, is the stupid one, the foolish one. Zulu people regard ancestors as stupid because ancestors can make you do stuff that doesn't make sense. And if you do not do that, they punish you. So that's why they call it Isithuta, the stupid ones. It's not a derogatory name, but that's how it's used with respect. When you are addressing your ancestors, you refer to them. Oh, Nina's tutors about Khumalo, you stupid people of the Khumalos. To an outsider, it seems odd, but yeah, that's how we address them. Isithuta.
Thank you. Dr. Khumalo, thank you very much for another edition. I see there are two more. As you know, I just love your work, so there's no point in really talking about it and asking questions. I got this book as soon as it was out, and I've enjoyed it. But when we talk about the language, especially around xenophobia, you know this, I grew up in Zululand in the 70s. There were people from the Mkwenas. They spoke some language we never understood. And my mother would say, hey, don't worry about the Mkwenas. They are Kweresing. And then there were other group of people who were cutting sugar cane. They were called Amampong. And all these people, they exist, they are part of us, but they are subhuman. I was shocked when I got into politics and someone said to me, hey, comrade, I'm important. I was like, no, it can't be. I'm important, don't do such things like talk non-racialism, non-sexism. I'm important, they cut sugar cane. So even the Mazenji, I knew about it in my village. But the language was never meant to hurt. It was the sound of their language that didn't quite tie up with our own, which was Zulu. So I've tried to explain to many of my friends that I've known over the years that there's another version of Amakwerekwe that we can actually harness and build something out of. Just to tell you the honest truth, that in 1999, when I didn't have a place to stay and study at university, I was housed by the Namibians, 3 of them, in their flat for the whole year. And guess how much I paid? 100 rand a month. So I understand at a very personal level the hurt that we have visited upon our own brothers and sisters. I don't even want to talk about people who went to exile, because for them their pain is even greater. I mean, 30 years in someone's country is nothing. So thank you, Khumalo, for blessing us with another work. But just know, we are no longer doing this for ourselves. We are doing it for the nation. So kill the notion of self.
Thank you.
This is for us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now I just wanted to make a comment to Ubuti, and I was just saying we've got 11 official languages.
Yeah.
But you know, if somebody wrote in Chivenda, for instance, the rest of us wouldn't have access to it. So I do understand the importance, perhaps, like while Fred is writing. By the way, congratulations, Fred. While he's writing in isiZulu, a Venda-speaking person, a Pedi-speaking person, would also like to have access to that work. They're not, you know, and this is speaking to all of us, and it's important that we all have what you call it. So, as far as I'm concerned, the job of a writer is to write in whatever language they feel comfortable in. And say you are a creative translator, for instance, if you feel, you know, Talk of the Town is a book that should have more access to Amazulu, Xhosas, Swatis, etc. take it out. Why don't you do the translation? But in telling a writer in what language, we never tell a painter what colors to use when they paint. So if we understand the fundamental idea that a writer is an artist, we then don't get to dictate what language they should use.
No, I don't think I was dictating. It was merely a question, given the context that we find ourselves in South Africa today. Decolonization, and the issue of decolonization is also the issue of language. So how do we promote our indigenous languages? So you have the Department of Basic Education, which is trying to actually advance our indigenous languages. But we don't have indigenous scholars actually writing in our languages.
We actually do. This is the thing.
We don't have them in numbers.
No, but
I'm a
this is the
teacher
thing.
myself. I'm in schools. We hardly have indigenous books that we are teaching in schools.
No, but just because the Department of Basic Education is not taking them up, it doesn't mean they don't exist. Because they do, trust me. I can give you a list, ask me a language, I can give you a list of writers in those languages. But the point is, at the end of the day, if we want a particular language, yeah? If I'm teaching in Limpopo, in Polokwane, and I want a language in, I want a Pedi translation of that, and I'm really serious about it, maybe I should, instead of asking Fred to write in Pedi, in Sepedi, maybe what I should be doing is saying, oh, okay, how can I raise funds to ensure that there's a Sepedi translation and create a Sepedi translation of that work? Because we put too much burden on writers as artists anyway, when we're not nearly buying enough books that already exist, you know? So publishers get excited about selling 1,000 copies in 2 years in a nation that has 50 million people.
And one other thing just to add on that is that for me, actually, the book, when I read it, it's not actually in English, it's in Zunglish. Because, I mean, I read a story, one of my favorites, as I said earlier on, is the story in the bus, you know? That story in the bus, actually, the context of the story is told in Zulu language. But is that we employed a language that we should all understand. Actually, it's not that much of English. Even the similes and idioms or metaphors are mostly in the English that is Zulized, you know. So for me, it's no longer. It's no longer. Why do we? For me, it's like, why do we consider English at this point in time? As you said, that culture is not static. It's something that is moving. Yeah. Why do we consider it an English text? It's a text. It's a story. You know, that can be is accessible also even to a 12-year-old. That story. And I think even if you have a 12-year-old or a brother's 12-year-old would understand that story, most of the stories that are told, because the idioms that you used, which are very much beautiful, are South African, you know. So is that in my own text I've underlined some of the things, but when somebody in the US, for instance, a person says, she was, if I could stand up, you will see how big I am in, such kind of things, you know. For me, it was like, wow, this is the story that is South African, but it's told in a context in America. For only accessibility, and that accessibility is not only for the US or whatever, it's also for South Africans. Because we must not forget that South Africa has got also 11 official languages, you know, and some of them are not explored that much, as you say, you know. But for me, the text, whatever is the aliens, everybody's the first story, everybody has got that problem. The first time I slept in a bed was when somebody from NRS came in. It was my brother's bed, and then it was bought in his collar. And then they shift you out. The next day, you had a date, but the next day, you have to cancel it because you're not sleeping in the bed. Yeah, it talks to me. It talks to most South Africans. So you go to maybe in New York, they don't have that kind of things, you know. So it's a South African story, which is told in a South African way, but employing a language that is accessible to most South Africans. And that's why I find a problem when we always say that English is a foreign language. It's not a foreign language. They've given it to us, we didn't like it before.
Our ancestors died for the language.
Yeah, it's our language now. That's why we can Zoomify it, you can Shaganize it, you can do anything about that language.
Yeah. But can I ask you, as you're an educator, right? So what gap do you feel still exists in the literature that is being churned out by, Black African writers? That is what gap exists to fill in this mode of decolonization, this vision of decolonization? What, in your perfect world, what kind of literature would you be seeing right now being churned out? Just from, I'm just interested.
I think it would be literature which is relevant to almost all moments or contexts that we find ourselves in South Africa. And there is that literature, like you guys pointed out. But my issue was that our indigenous language are actually not prioritized as much. That's the issue that I have. Hence, I raised the issue.
So it's not about content, it's about...
Not the content necessarily, but the language itself. Because remember, language is also used to promote what? Culture. Through language, we know ourselves, our being, and how we go about knowing the world that we experience. So, I myself, for one, I did not have the privilege to actually learn my mother tongue.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love that my offspring would actually have that. But as it currently stands in our schools, especially the public school system, where a majority of South Africans are educated from, there are no books in our indigenous languages. Most of the time, even if you look at the debates here, they mainly happen in higher education and whatnot. It does not filter down to basic education. So even if you have workshops which are done by the department, they only accommodate what officials. The teachers are not actually included in that. So I think, for me, the best way is to also now write in our own languages.
Or translate.
Or translate. Yeah.
Or buy.
It's not an official for the
Consume the books.
Maybe you can respond to you.
No, we can have a debate after this.
Last three questions.
Thanks, Fred, for just showing us some aspects of the book. That was the main value. I just want to ask, I just did a short scan through the figure of the character, which is also part of the Ancestral Voices title. Taking the nature in which Lorraine was asking the question, and the character and how you depict Gideon. I think there's a resonance in that story, having finished the chapter itself, in terms of what I think people from that timeline, and also a youth in South Africa, are grappling with this kind of home and away kind of dichotomy. And then within that, I want to understand, is it possible for you to think through or talk to us about writing another character of the same that is able to straddle this home and away in the context of languages? Now, there's a general discussion going on here about the use of African languages in English, and it's always on this constellation between the literacy environment and also within general education, higher education, and the curriculum conversations. So are we able in the late 2000s to write a character that can be able to deal with more the nuances of language in terms of from a translation perspective, or to write about that the character is not conflicted by being able to not know language, but is maybe the character is multilingual. Are we able to in South Africa to write characters like that? Yes. Just also, I appreciate all the sentiments that were coming around. No. People have done that. Nick has done that in his books, because he's from Soweto, and his stories are set in Soweto. So he is able to reflect the Soweto reality linguistically. We've got characters to speak. The character way back home, he was born in exile, but he can speak local languages, Swahili and so on. So he explores that reality of a South Africa that is imagined linguistically. So the exclusivity of characters in terms of language is something that we as writers keep trying to. It's difficult if you only know isiZulu Nesilise to write a character who shifts from isiZulu to Sepedi and so on, unless you are multilingual like Unek, you say. Sure. Yeah. No, I think it's a good answer. Thank you so much.
Becky, then Nick.
Okay. For some odd reasons, South Africans are doing very well when it comes to essential language literature. So the department doesn't really struggle every year to select the books that will be part of the curriculum. What, you want to call them black? Okay, let's call them black. What black writers don't do is to write textbooks in isiZulu. That is actually where the problem is, not literature. This could be in isiZulu in less than 3 months. It's not an issue. When I got into publishing the first time, yes, I'm Zulu, don't tell people know. I contributed a book, an English grammar book, that was published by Macmillan Publishing. English, not Zulu. Because they run they've got an agenda, they've got a business model, and they run with it. And after I published my other book, which I want to tell you about, they invited me and said, no, here is the brief, write a book. So I wrote a book in isiZulu about set in a rural environment, except that it's post-apocalyptic South Africa. You know, there's an agriculture house, there's water, there's electricity. But the idea really was to push the idea of Zulu culture so that it's never lost. So work is happening, but it's about who is actually running that agenda. The people who should be starting new publishing houses are busy with other projects. As black people, not that I am one of them, as black people, we don't have even AfriForum of our own. You know, I admire those people. Every day I was like, yeah, get them, AfriForum, get them. They've got the money, they've got the expertise, and they say, here's the constitution, and they throw it in your face. We don't have that kind of solidarity as black people.
Solidarity is another movement.
Exactly. You see, we don't have that kind of solidarity. Our trade unions are in bed with the ruling party. As long as they have the same meeting overnight, deciding on cabinet, we don't have trade union. So for me, I've decided not to even participate in those things. For many years, tell you why I want to be a white man. For many years, I was trying to master the language of the oppressor. I spent all my life and all the reading trying to understand English. By the time I mastered a little bit of it, the decolonization movement came along. So I especially I've done that for over 25 years. And I thought that was it. Suddenly now I find even my status update on Facebook. I'm like, Batike. I'm writing in Zulu again. Because I can't lose my own language.
Yes.
But my daughter is English. She gets 60% for Zulu. Don't ask me why she's English.
Okay.
Thank you.
Last question.
So for me, it was more about, I do appreciate whatever it has been said. I think, my brother, you also understood where the writers stand in this particular, because we just write and then there's a gap, of course, and then that's the gap that you have already mentioned, the gap of translations, for instance. That's why translators are there for, to translate books like this, which are very beautiful, so that people can access them wherever, or wherever they can access it, you know. But talking about the book itself, I think what struck me most about your writing, Fred, in this particular short stories, because short stories are not popular in South Africa, actually. And then there are few writers that have done them. Even from drum era, it was more of an anthologies instead of a collection by one author, you know. But what stands in this book for me that I read it, I read 6 stories in a play, you know, because that's a book that you don't want to be disturbed when you are ready. You want to finish this particular story. One thing that stands out for me, which you have done well in this book, that I love very much, is characterization of your characters. All your characters actually, you know who they are actually. And unfortunately for me, I know you for quite some time. You talk about Mon, you talk about everyone. But there's a story. There's a story, I think it's the last story, and you touched on it. It's set in Yeovil, and then it's set in a place that I always loved, a car, you know. And there's a character called Magesh.
That's you.
And but there's that man. There's that man. And having been around your space for some time, you know, when I read that character of that man, I always thought of that Lemulu.
Okay, wrap up this.
Always when I read about that character, it's that man, and I was like, okay. And everything that it does is what that Lemulu is. You know, what they've been doing. Do you, because I also write in that way, that sometimes we try to fit a particular character in events that are not his. So I know that Dudley is East and stuff. Yeah? But simply because I've been around your space, is that man Dudley Mulo?
You know what I do, what I did in the Busi story and the Guzmagesh story. It's a technique that has been used by many writers. Paul Auster. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. Paul Auster is an American writer. He's written, yeah. He's created a character called Paul Auster in his own books. Mtigan Mshele does that in Pleasure as well. He creates a character who's Mshele.
And Dr. Bani.
Yeah, you see. So I was just having fun with these characters, yeah. And
But they're drawn from real people.
No, I could take a composite. Guzmagesh is a composite of many people. Yeah, and so is that man. Yeah. So I said to them, if you don't buy me a beer, I'll put you in a...
Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of this discussion. Thank you so much, Fred. Fred will be here, available to sign his books.
This is 250 at Talk of the Town. And I've brought some copies of my Zulu books. This is likely to be set for great 10th soon. It was written specifically for that. It's in Zulu. It's a reworking of a book that I published 2 years ago. The Dancing the Death Drill, about the singing of the SS men. Now it's written from the point of view of a younger character, so a younger reader can relate. It is 200 grand. And here is a collection of Zulu short stories. It's like Animal Farm in Zulu, but in short story form. The main character is Mazikovi, who's a very smart, left-wing cat, you know. Yeah, he says he must rebel against these human beings and so on. So it is set in the townships of Durban. It's very, it's Zulu short stories aimed at...
And the first buyer will be this gentleman. But of course.
Those are these.
Thank you as well to our host, JIAS.
She's inside there.
She's drinking wine.
Okay. Once again, thank you people for braving the cold and coming out here. We are highly honored and humbled that you came. And I hope you enjoyed the book. And we continued having the conversation. And let me use the opportunity to introduce some fellow writers who are here with us. Starting from my extreme left, with long braids, is Angela Makolwa. Prolific author. And this is Zukiswa Wana. This is Nick Mhlongo. This is Begisisa Ngube.
I'm retired.
Oh, I didn't see you. Oh, hi. Femi, how are you?
I'm well, thanks.
Okay, welcome. Yeah. There's a Femi, and who was also involved in the editing of one of the stories here in this collection. In its earlier incarnation. Yes. So those are the fellow writers who are doing splendid work. From different styles and of writing. So that's the books are here. If you want to buy, I can sign it.
No. When they are.
Thanks to the